The Olympics are one of the greatest sporting events of the modern times, and is one of the only events that brings the whole world together in one place to compete in sports. And in the 1960 Olympics, Wilma Rudolph of the United States was a great example of the Olympic spirit. When she was only about 4 years old, she contracted polio, and her legs became useless. But she fought through it and went through the rehab as a child and was able to regain the use of her legs. And through much training, she was able to become a world-class runner, and she won 3 gold medals at the 1960 Olympics. And Wilma Rudolph's perseverance through all her adversity of contracting polio and then fighting through that is a great example of the quote of the English proverb, "A smooth sea never made a skilled mariner." I think that the lesson we can draw from this quote is it is important to persevere through adversity. And I completely agree with this, because if you persevere through adversity, you will be remembered throughout history, and you will also succeed financially. So those who persevere through adversity will be remembered throughout history. One great example of this is George Washington. He was the leader of the upstart American colonies. They did not have many resources compared to the British. They didn't have much going for them at all. But he persevered through the adversity of trying to raise an army, of trying to train an army, of trying to get enough money to run an army, and he was able to pull off the unthinkable, to defeat the British, which at that time the British were the great world power, and it was really unthinkable that such a small group of poorly trained colonists could defeat the British Army. But George Washington, by persevering through adversity, was able to pull that off, and he is of course remembered as the father of our country because of his perseverance through adversity. Another good example of persevering through adversity is the Wright brothers. They had the first plane, or they built the first plane, but it took them several years. They didn't get on the first try. It took them many failures, going to Kitty Hawk and then back to their shop in Ohio, before they were finally able to come through with the first powered flight in man's history. So, and they will be remembered for changing history because of their perseverance through adversity. Besides being remembered by history, you also succeed financially. One great example of this is Steve Jobs. He was a high school dropout. He didn't have many of the tools that we would think would succeed, but he did succeed. He has built one of the greatest companies in Apple and has put forth some of the best products and the products that everyone across the world wants. And Apple is one of the biggest symbols of iconic symbolism in our world. Another example of succeeding financially, of persevering through adversity, is Sergio Santos. He's a baseball player who came up through the minor leagues as an infielder, but he just wasn't good enough to make it to the major leagues. So he went all the way back down to single A and started again as a pitcher, and he made it to the major leagues and became one of the best relievers in the baseball and signed a major contract. And because he persevered through that adversity of realizing he wasn't good enough and then going back and trying again, he was able to succeed financially. So it is important to persevere through adversity, because you will be remembered just like George Washington and the Wright brothers, and you will also succeed financially just like Steve Jobs and Sergio Santos. So this English proverb, "A smooth sea never made a skilled mariner," reminds us that it is important to persevere through adversity. Just like Wilma Rudolph, she could have sat in a wheelchair her whole life and just done something else, or possibly not. But she went through the rehab and determined to make something of her life, and she is remembered and commemorated she was commemorated just a few years ago on a postage stamp as one of the greatest athletes and examples of persevering through adversity.